Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar presentation, Influential Law Librarians. I'm Gail Martin, Marketing Associate at Reed Tech, and I wanted to cover a few housekeeping things before we get started. All lines have been muted. Please feel free to submit questions during the conference by using the chat feature and sending the question to host. If you have difficulty hearing the audio over your computer, try dialing in to the conference. Without further ado, I would like to introduce today's panel members. Amantha Allen. Amantha is a User Experience Manager at LexisNexis IP, focused on internal and client-facing training and development. She's joined today by Diana Koppang. Diana has specialized in intellectual property research throughout her 12-year career as a law firm librarian. She has presented on research techniques at national conferences for AALL and the Patent Information Users Group, as well as guest lecturing at the law schools of Northwestern and Boston universities. We're pleased to have her presenting today. Thank you again, everyone, for attending today's presentation. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Diana.
So the 6 strategies we'll be talking about today are anticipate, volunteer, integrate, partner, be present, and be vigilant. So I'm just going to walk through these one by one. Okay, so first for anticipate. This is really about understanding your group's needs before they ask for specific projects or specific topics. So the idea is that you're there before they realize it. You're prepared for the questions they're going to ask. A key part of this is really understanding the composition of the practice group, and this would apply to other practice areas as well. Within intellectual property, it's often a pretty clear division between patent and trademark attorneys especially, though you will see crossover. And then trade secrets and technology can kind of work its way into those in various ways. And then another split within an IP group is transactional or prosecution, and then litigation. So again, there can be crossover, but it's not unusual that specific attorneys really focus in transactional or prosecution and others focus in litigation. So it's good to know when you're talking to different attorneys what their specialty is and understanding that the context that might place their questions within. Or when you're talking about products and, you can assume some understanding of some products and maybe they wouldn't be familiar with other products. One thing I often do, if I can't remember what a new attorney's specialty is, maybe they're a specific type of patent work they do, what area of art, I'll look at their bio online. But I'm also not afraid just to ask them to tell me a little bit more about their background, hopefully in a more casual setting, such as a network meeting or a practice group meeting or just stopping by their office. You also want to know about what all the different people in the department are doing. So this can vary widely between law firms and even within one law firm between the different practice areas in terms of the types of work secretaries, paralegals, or associates are given. So understanding that can give you opportunities to help those different groups. It could be that a secretary or paralegal is doing work that it's not that they're not capable of it, but perhaps you have tools that would assist in that, or maybe it's really an area that you should promote that you might be a stronger person or have more background in doing a specific task. That's not meaning to step on their toes or to take away work, but it could be that you're really helping them out by offering that assistance. The conflicts process, at our firm, our librarians actually participate in a large way in the conflicts process and checking due diligence on potential clients, so looking for kind of the bad stuff, the red flags that could cause problems. What's interesting to note there is what clients could be coming down the road. At my firm, I get to see the clients that are approved following the conflicts process. Understanding like who the new clients are, what attorneys they're working with, is a good thing to know when you're kind of tracking news. Because it might be something that you want to do on your own before perhaps asking an attorney for alerts, just to keep your own eye on things. Staying informed of firm and CLE programs. So if they're having an internal program for associates on a particular area, recently our firm was holding in-house training on due diligence matters for our corporate group, and I asked if I could just sit in understanding the projects they have, even though it really was focused on attorney work, not really what a librarian would provide. But that gives me a lot more background on what those associates might be handling and what challenges they might be facing and where our products could fit in with that. CLE as well, depending on what your firm subscribes to, they might have a firm-wide access to something like PLI in which you have access to those programs as well. But also seeing if there's, CLE programs being hosted at your firm. Can you just be kind of a fly on the wall there and, learn about that specific practice area? And the last two for anticipating or following industry news. So just keeping your own alerts running. Even if an attorney's not asking for them, make sure you're watching either key industries for your firm, but especially the legal industry and legal practice tools. And the last is be prepared to be the expert on these products. You want to be the person they go to know how this product works or that product works. And make sure you know products outside of your embedded assignment area if that is a system you use within your library. Next, we're moving on to volunteer. So we have to be more proactive in our field. Reactive would just be working on the projects you're assigned, completing the tasks they asked for, and wrapping it up then. What we really need to do is make sure we're volunteering to do something to continue that project if it seems to fit in well. So if we're running a patent portfolio search on maybe a client, perhaps a company they're looking to acquire, or that client themselves, ask if you can run some kind of alert on new filings, or perhaps there's a way you can help with the tracking of the progress of a patent or a trademark through the system. News alerts, of course, are kind of an obvious one when you're profiling a company or a person, setting up those alerts for them. The other thing for volunteering is instead of just giving them maybe the quick and dirty answer in email, understanding where your project is ultimately going, kind of the final end user is the client. So looking at how that needs to be client-ready is how I phrase it. So it could be that a more, I say fancy report, so maybe a branded report, something that's more of a clearly deliverable as a PDF with active links, that sort of thing, very dynamic. That might be a real value for the attorney to pass on to the client. So it's not a bad question to ask in terms of formatting where this is going to end up eventually so that you're prepared for that. And I just put a link to a 2015 presentation I did on creating those client-ready deliverables. Another way is to track industry moves within a practice area, maybe within your region. There are tools like that, like Rival Edge, that do that, but also through some Google alerts or news alerts, you could track that. And then just really being active about providing training in-house by your librarians, by your staff, or bringing the vendors in. So try not to wait till the attorneys come to you for training, but really try to have a regular training schedule going on. Integrate is one of my favorite things to really tout and preach on. You need to not just be a department that serves the attorneys, but a department that serves the whole firm. The more departments, practice groups, people at all levels who love you and can't think of a world without you in it, either you personally or the group, I would suggest the group would be a better target goal, the library as a whole. The harder it is going to be to cut you or to replace you with a, perhaps an outsourcing service. So probably the first really obvious one for all of us is the marketing and business development department. So working on competitive intelligence, setting up news alerts, kind of tracking what other firms are doing, what other programs or events they're sponsoring. Human resources, we might help with seeing who's moving within the legal industry, looking for trends of a large number of attorneys moving from a firm that might suggest an exodus and maybe potentially good people to try to track down to move into our firm, that sort of thing. On the finance side, we often work with our finance department to track down clients that are delinquent or literally fallen off the face of the map, and we're trying to figure out if they're still around or maybe who's taken over their business and that sort of thing. And also providing news services for them in terms of what's changing in the legal industry or perhaps the finance world. And the last one may or may not be available at your firm depending on what the breakdown of this is. But at our firm, and I know a number of firms have this, is a pricing consultant, and they could have a different title. But basically, they're working with the groups to help them estimate project costs to provide to the clients. So it could be billing rates, it could be estimating how long a case might take in a jurisdiction before a judge, likelihood of success, predicting kind of hours or database costs. So there's a number of elements there that you might be able to help with. And this tends to be a small department in a lot of firms unless you're a mega firm. So I would bet they really need some help. Then the next one is look for cross-practice opportunities. So you're looking to see, one person asks you to practice group for this kind of project, and you're like, yeah, I know that Joe over in tech transactions is working on the same thing. Don't be afraid to suggest that. In a firm, it's very common that they don't know where maybe particular projects could cross over, or that there's already a very strong expert among your attorneys in a particular area. So be willing to be that link between the groups, between individuals. Whenever possible, attend practice group meetings, and I think I mentioned this before, the in-house CLE programs. Even if it's for a short amount, so you might ask, I'd love to attend your meeting just at the beginning to tell you about new initiatives or to remind you about things our products can do. They may not want you to stay for the whole meeting. There might be strategy after that they'd rather kick you out for, and that's fine. Don't be offended by that, but you have to be the one to offer to do that. And then if your firm ever hosts association meetings, you may not be able to attend meetings outside your office, but recently our local chapter of the Legal Marketing Association held a meeting at our firm, and myself and our competitive intelligence specialist just said, hey, can we go? And because it was at our firm, it was really easy to go, and nobody seemed to mind, but it was nice hearing their perspective on things and hear the challenges the marketing department faces. And that sort of thing. That different perspective can be so helpful when you're trying to integrate yourself with the whole firm. Partners. So obviously no one's going to let you, no one's going to let you be a partner at the firm in a name or in financial compensation. But being a partner in the firm's and the practice group's goals is so important. Knowing your firm's strategic plan. They probably have one. It could be something that you've never been given or that's published anywhere, but it doesn't hurt to ask if that exists. And understanding those goals, that plan, to know how the library can fit into it. And perhaps when it's being revised next, you can try to be explicitly placed within that plan so they understand what your role is in developing the firm's plan. And understand the practice group's goals, which might have their own individual goals within the firm in terms of expansion or speaking opportunities or perhaps industries they're targeting or market size they're targeting. So understanding what they're looking for can really advance your knowledge of future projects or the ways you can suggest that the library can work. This next phase is probably a bit sensitive for librarians. When I was in library school many years ago, we loved hearing the phrase gatekeeper. And this sounds very powerful, a lot of authority in it. I would argue that that term has become a little negative, and perhaps it doesn't deserve that negativity, but instead of a positive gatekeeper as somebody who's really kind of trying to tell you what all the good places are for information, where all the good stuff is, it sounds more like you're keeping it under lock and key. Like I said, whether that's deserved or not, I do think that's how that word has shifted in understanding, or at least the perception of it. So that's a word we don't want to really use anymore, at least in my opinion. You need to redefine yourself as partnering with the firm, not trying to, try to funnel so much through you that you're hampering how the firm can use the resources that you are a specialist in. Another way is to watch for speaking or writing opportunities for either you or your attorneys or administration. So I know a lot of us really are on just a ton of listservs within the legal industry, perhaps more than even some attorneys. So there's been times where I've seen a new conference kind of come to town that hasn't been there before that I knew would fit into an area that an attorney at our firm has been working in, something I've helped him with research for maybe smaller articles or presentations to his client. So being able to kind of feed that information into him has been great, and he's been able to take up that opportunity up. So again, don't be afraid to kind of suggest these things. Leveraging your vendor connections to develop those publishing or speaking opportunities is an interesting thing that I've seen more and more as we go maybe one provider or we develop firm-wide contracts. Not that that really is the key reason to go in those directions or to choose a vendor, but it's a nice benefit you might be able to enjoy having more kind of a direct line into the higher-ups at a vendor to find writing, speaking opportunities for your attorneys. And again, that's just another added value that the attorneys see that you're a good connection for that those opportunities that can add a lot of value to your position. And then just being that communication link is the way I see it. So again, this kind of goes back to integrating, knowing your group, knowing the cross-practice opportunities, but be willing to be that kind of person who can cross among the groups. You know, we work with all groups, not just one, so even if you're embedded, you're familiar with all the groups. So being that link is so important and so valuable. Be present. What I'm talking about is making sure they haven't forgotten about you. A while ago, our firm used to be on a floor separate from the rest of the firm, and that was just terrible. People forgot where we were, forgot that we were there. I had people ask, wait, do we still have a physical library? Or, yeah, couldn't even remember what floor we were on. It was detrimental, and it's been so much better since we moved back to a floor in the attorneys. And just in the casual conversations, you know, if you run into somebody while you're both getting coffee, just don't get your coffee and go back to your office, talk to them a bit. You know, so while email is important, I really prefer that they hear your voice, that they see you, they recognize you in the firm. So I strongly encourage that. I mentioned the drop by, just not too often. If you're the person who's like stopping in their office every other day to check in on them, they're going to get really annoyed really fast, just like you would probably be annoyed if somebody dropped by your office that often. So just be conscious of that. Understanding their schedules and be accommodating with training. So if you know this is an attorney that regularly comes in at 9:30 or 10, don't try to schedule training at 9:30. You know, maybe these are people that stay later. No judging. But be aware of that. Hopefully you have access to group calendars and that sort of thing to at least see if they're busy or not. Okay, this next two lines are, I hope don't offend anybody, but make sure they know you're normal and professional and dress professionally. People have a kooky impression of librarians, I've learned over the years. They think of these crazy stereotypes of public librarians, who I think are generally pretty normal too. But having them see you and interact with you and speak with you, that's how they learn that you're not just some crazy person who knows a lot of random facts and hides behind books, which doesn't really describe us except for probably the random facts piece. They need to see you. They need to see that you're that person they can interact with professionally. So as hard of a that is to take, and I know I'm probably going to get some emails or perhaps people being offended, it is something we have to constantly be aware of. And this is something that's told to people not just at our department, but other administrative staff, other possibly attorneys, I don't know. But it's something that we do have to be aware of and conscious of. The vendor presentations I consider as being present for being able to organize those and understanding the need they need to be organized, and always attend these. If you can at all make it possible, do not set up a vendor presentation and then don't go to it. It might be a one-on-one trading in their office, and okay, fine, you don't want to be in there crowding the office. But anytime it's a vendor presentation for a group, you should be there, especially if it's your embedded group or you're the library manager, maybe at a firm like of my firm's size. And understand how you want to group those presentations. It doesn't always work to put the entire practice group in one presentation. It might be more valuable to do one for partners and one for associates, as they're often going to use databases in two different ways. And again, being at those presentations help you understand what they're getting out of the product, their questions about the product. You need that information. Asking them to report back later is just not going to work. And the social angle thing is if there's a possibility to have more of a social hour with the vendors, maybe at the end of the day, a happy hour to kind of demonstrate products. This is not an all-the-time thing, maybe a once-a-year thing, but it's nice. It sets a slightly different tone, a different comfortable tone, and it's a good opportunity to really advocate the products that you're paying a lot of money for. The last thing, participate in firm events. I know this can be hard depending on your family schedules or where you live, you know, far suburbs and that sort of thing. But being at the Christmas party, being at happy hours at the end of the day, retirement celebrations, birthday cake cutting, you need to be there and visible again. So don't shy away from those, as tempting as it can sometimes be. And then be vigilant. You know, a lot of these, my keys to success are kind of intertwining with each other, but it's our job to be vigilant. It's alerts, whether it's for attorneys, alerts for us, alerts for our group. You want to keep current on as many things as possible. I know this takes up a lot of your time, but it's so important. Legal industry, clients industries, research products, statistics of what's happening or statistical products, events and trends. You need to be the person who knows what's going on in the room. You may not be, you're not expected to be the legal expert, but understanding what's happening out there, that's so important. And this last one is kind of a checklist I use when I'm looking at new contracts, the questions I'm asking, so I'm kind of covering everything. And more comes up as you demo a product. Sorry, I probably should have paused there. Do we have any questions from the group about the keys to success before I kind of launch into how I analyze products and look at some examples of ReadTech products?
I don't see any questions, Diana, but please feel free to submit your questions through the chat feature or the Q&A on the dashboard, and we'll be happy to take them.
Okay. So before we're kind of my theories of success, this is kind of divided into two rather dramatic pieces. But the next is looking at products, kind of how you're looking at them. And then the next piece is looking at the ways my firm currently uses some ReadTech products. This is clearly sponsored by ReadTech, so we're going to talk about the products we use with them. And then we'll kind of circle back to some librarian points. So moving along, product evaluation checklist. So depending on what your position is within the firm, you might be looking at this in different ways. As library manager, I'm very focused on the contract, but also the functionality. It's a lot to look at all of these things, so often I'll pass the functionality examination on to my research librarians. I mean, obviously they do more research day to day than I now do, to my great sadness. They're awesome. So it's fine for me to handle that analysis and learn these databases more. It's just more of their daily world. So don't be afraid to pass that on to them and collect their feedback. So on the contract, the price is the first question I ask and the last question the vendor wants to answer. You know, vendors always want to get in first with the demos and get you excited about it, but if you get all the way there, and especially if you've shown it to attorneys and then you find out the price, boy, can that be bad. You know, attorneys don't often understand, while that doesn't sound like a lot of money, they don't understand it in the scope of the budget you're running, that it's not that simple. It's not just another 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is. You know, it's just not that simple. So not understanding whether it can even be in the scope of your budget is so important, and push for that. Don't be afraid to say, you know what, I can't have this discussion without at least getting a ballpark idea of the cost. Otherwise, you're just wasting their time and your time. Minimum contract length and price locks. This keeps becoming more important. I'm seeing with a lot of vendors that aren't the big vendors, so basically Lexis and Westlaw and Bloomberg to an extent, that we're seeing shorter contract lengths. Now, could be doing a 1-year to a 2-year could get you a better price on a product, being willing to lock into the 2 years. Another option sometimes is to have the option to renew with a limit on the price increase in terms of a price lock outside of a commitment time. Spend requirements, that sometimes comes up in trademark or patent products in terms of there's a component that are perhaps, you know, custom reports that vendor is providing in addition to their main research platform. So it could be that your contract is tied to how much you spend on those ad hoc orders. Number of users, concurrent or not. If it's firm-wide, so often you'll see an enterprise plan, but it doesn't necessarily mean that in terms of how it's priced. So it can really drill down pretty far from firm size, practice group size, understanding your breakout of prosecution or litigation attorneys within your practice, and especially with an IP, is so important. Often the only information the vendor has to go on to start is to go to your firm's public website, look at the profiles of the attorneys and say, well, all of them do prosecution and litigation, because attorneys all want to say they do everything in their area, and totally understandable from a marketing standpoint. But in the reality of the day-to-day in your firm, who are the core prosecution attorneys who are the core litigation attorneys. And often that is something you can work with the vendor on determining the price based on that. And just, of course, the classic question is, anything else you're not telling me that could be incurred? So then we go to the functionality piece of the product, and this is very broad. You know, with different types of practice areas, your questions are going to get far more specific. But these are kind of the ones we generally look at. So, you know, whether you can recover costs, what kind of options are to deliver. This becomes really key, I think, especially in patent research. Patent attorneys want to be able to get their hands on the data behind the analysis, behind the reports, and be able to kind of dig into patent by patent or get that spreadsheet, and they want to manipulate that and everything. So those range of deliverable options are so important. Whether there's some kind of monitoring, alerting, tracking function that's built in and is built into the cost, not an extra cost. That's always kind of a key place costs can run up. The scope of the database, of course, whether it's a geographic and the countries they cover or the dates they cover, that sort of thing. That's kind of a no-brainer for all of us. Machine translations, again, becomes an issue with on the prosecution side for trademarks or patents, but often for the most part for patents. And then what's the help desk and training support like? Is it 24/7? Is it only to a certain time? And in what time zone is that time ending? And really testing out the help desk. When you're trying out a product, and I would always hesitate to buy any product based on a demo alone. You want to get your team in there to practice with that product and explore it. And librarians are the best in the world at doing that sort of thing. And as part of that trial, and I would always ask for at least a week if possible, if not longer. I've rarely seen anything more than 2 weeks, but asking for a day or two doesn't work because we get busy on a random day, and then you can't get in there and have time to play with the platform. But as part of your exploring that platform, I would definitely ask your team to call the help desk, see how they respond, and call a couple times, because you can always have somebody with like a bad day or something. But find out how well they know their products. How can they respond to you? Are they going to send you the document if you need it, send you a search string? Can they answer you right away, or are they going to call you back in 5 hours? Do they actually follow up with your question down the road? From my own personal experience, I found the Read Tech support line to be incredibly helpful. That's been my team's experience as well. I've been really impressed by how they get back to us if we've had a project situation and they help us with it. And I've already put it out of my mind because I've moved on like 3 projects down, and they call me back like later that day or the next day and said, you know, did that all work out all right? I've always been really impressed by that, and that can really make or break an impression of a product, and especially if it's an attorney calling in. Good God, if that doesn't go well. Okay, so now we're going to move into basically a focus on trademarks and patents. I apologize to all the copyright research-loving people out there. I'm not really going to touch on that in this presentation, mostly because I don't do a lot of it, and there's not a whole lot of resources out there on it. Doesn't mean there's none, but it's not the same plethora of research tools that we use in trademark and patents. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that in the chat box. So for trademarks, there's a whole number of things you can do as a librarian that they may not think of you to ask to do these projects. Often these have fallen on paralegals within our practice groups, and not knocking them, but our background in advanced research can be extremely valuable in these types of products, or we can at least supplement and check their research or help them build these projects out. So evidence of use is probably the one that I think of probably the most in terms of trademark research that librarians excel, because this is looking at Google searching, news searching, social media searching. It's searching in all kinds of crazy ways that the traditional just person who knows how to Google isn't going to think of. Trademark searching, I mean that in more of a platform like a Core Search or a Sagis. We're doing more probably at that level of screening search level. Usually when it goes further in, it is more at an attorney, a paralegal, or a custom search platform, a custom search service, like it's offered by Core Search or CompuMark. Portfolios, my team frequently does these when we're looking at a potential new client or trying to get a baseline on a client of running a trademark and a patent portfolio. Litigation history, searching either by a trademark or by a company name. But searching by the trademark is one that often other people don't know how to do except the library. So that's a key one, and knowing that you're using the right scope for the litigation search in terms of searching things like TTAB, not just the federal courts. Domain name research gets really interesting from a who is perspective in terms of digging into those documents, looking for historic owners, looking for Internet Archive captures to see when the domain name changes. I find that to be one of the more fun areas of trademark research. Company and people investigations, just like we do across all practice areas, but again can be really key for trademarks in terms of understanding when a company started, when a person became connected with a company, when a brand became connected with a company, that sort of thing. And needle in a haystack is how I describe so much of trademark research. I mean, it really is kind of a search everywhere kind of project area that can just be really random, and in our random collection of knowledge that librarians develop over the years, this is why we're the best at it. I'm going through some of the research tools, and I say this not comprehensive. So I don't know if there's vendors on the line out there outside of ReadTech. They're going to be like, I can't believe you didn't put my product on there. I'm not trying to make this a research, comprehensive list of research tools. These are the products that I'm more familiar with or that I've kind of explored a bit to consider for purchase. There are other good websites out there who constantly monitor these things, so just want to throw that out there before anybody gets really mad at me. At our firm, we use CT Core Search. We've used Sagis and CompuMark in the past, but we're using that for searching and watches on domains, trademarks, US, worldwide, that sort of thing, and more complex reports. Don't discount the USPTO. I know a lot of our contracts are no flat rates, so it's no big deal to go into Core Search. When I'm doing a really quick search and I don't want to have to log in and I'm just looking for US things, or I'm using a trademark search to aid in building a patent search, I go to the USPTO. Not ashamed of it. There's still a lot you can do with that database. Trademark Vision is kind of a newish product. It's been out there for a couple of years, started in Australia. They're doing some really cool things with image searches. Trying to track images within the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, and the Google Images database. So when you're looking more, not wanting to break out an image by the design elements, but actually put that image in there and for it to look for things like that, it's pretty cool. I encourage people to explore that. Page Vault is something we've looked at, we just signed a contract for. There's a lot of products out there for web captures. When I say for document production, I'm talking about being able to produce in a litigation matter. And that's kind of the key thing there, right, is how it can be captured, how it can be reproduced in terms of in print or electronically. Now, there's these captures out there that capture this giant screen scroll, right? You hit it and you get everything on the page, but good luck trying to print that out or put a base number at the end that's really like 10 physical pages down. A product like Page Vault lets you capture things, capture web page, and it's specifically looking to capture them to be functional in document production. The other thing we really loved about was that it can capture social media sites and traditional websites well. The social media thing is a real pain to use just like an Adobe capture on. 2D services and 66A services, these are kind of watching for other people filing for trademarks that get cited against your mark. The idea being maybe you need to watch that company if their trademark gets rejected, and then they're just going to go ahead and use it anyways. So it kind of gives you a heads up on who else is looking to use marks like your own. And then domain names, usually more on the monitoring side, but there are some reverse whois capabilities in these products. Moving on to patents, or I'll pause for any questions on trademarks.
There wasn't a trademark question, but a question did come in, Diana.
Oh, I see that, on proactivity?
Yeah. Want to address that one?
Yeah, information glut. I mean, so the question is, what do you recommend or suggest to avoid causing information glut, an opt-out procedure or format to determine what is useful for tailoring? I mean, this is where I feel like the embedded librarians come in really well in terms of being that kind of interim filter for the practice groups. I mean, we have enough trouble already, and we're still kind of developing ways to do this at our firm in terms of creating more custom newsletters or grouped content. I wish I had a great solution for that. I really encourage the embedded librarian system so that your people know the areas well, know the clients well in that practice group. I don't know. I think that's always going to be kind of an issue. We're often wanting the products to be able to dedupe in terms of articles that are getting published in 5 different places. That's always a good feature to look for. Good options on frequency, things like that. I don't really have a great answer for that. I feel like that's going to be our lifelong challenge in our field is the information glut, and it's probably just going to get worse. Sorry, that's not very positive, but anything else at this point? Okay, moving on. Okay, so research areas for patents. So if you're a patent searcher already, a patent researcher already, these are going to sound familiar and kind of similar to the trademark list. So prior art searches, looking for articles or other documents that might reference the technology that you're looking to patent. Portfolios, again, we often do those for our attorneys here at the onset of a new client or looking at new clients. And that's what we use Total Patent for. Litigation history, we're looking either through, there's a number of things, but Docket Navigator is probably our key one for that, but we can also do some of those searches in Lexis, and I know Westlaw has availability for that as well. A key thing we also, in Lex Machina as well. A key thing we always have to watch for that is to make sure patents are included from amended complaints. So often a database might just do a sweep through the first complaint, pull out the patent number, tag it with that, but then an amended complaint gets filed, another patent gets wrapped in, and then it's not caught. So I believe last I checked, Docket Navigator and Lex Machina do that. I haven't checked lately to see how the other products are treating that. These next 3 are things that often our clients ask for as they're looking to enter a new market or looking to acquire a company. We've been doing, it seems like a lot of these lately. So some of this is just news and Googling and looking at who's got patents out there in the area and kind of constantly going back and forth among those 3 things to build a profile of what an industry looks like. You know, who are the players? Is it really glutted with a lot of players? Are they mostly U.S.? Are they mostly overseas or a particular area of the world? And are these companies that are actually filing patents? It's not uncommon to look at an industry and not find a lot of patents for them because what they're doing might be involving licensing of technology maybe for just a couple players in the field. So that could change depending on what your client is looking for. Are they just moving into an industry or are they looking to patent within that industry? So that can be the difference between like a technology landscape and a patent landscape. And I should say there are often at some points where we don't have the tools in our library to do these more complex reports and especially the really pretty reports that other companies can do. There's a wide list of companies out there that can do these landscapings. Probably one of the most well-known ones would be Anography. And there's some you can do within your products like Advisor, like Total Patent, to get kind of quick snapshots of what the industry is like before you decide how far in the client wants to go. But the library can be a good connection for the client and attorney to those companies. So I've definitely collected information on various private companies that can do transactional projects for you to kind of connect the client to. That's a service you can offer to really kind of vet the vendor out there to know their reputation and their cost structure. Tracking and alerting, so alerting to new filings or tracking patents as they work through the prosecution steps. And then analytics, but we're going to touch that, go into that a little bit more just in a bit. Research tool patents, again, not comprehensive, so please watch angry emails to me. So Total Patent 1, that's what we use here. We are former innovation users, but we now have gone all over to Total Patent. You might be using Total Patent or Total Patent 1. They're transitioning to this new platform, so some have already been transitioned, some have not. So if you're wondering what that extra 1 word is, you might be lined up to transition over soon. These are a few other products that I've seen at the different conferences and met with their reps, but I have not used Microsoft Orbit or Patent Scout. I'm sure there's definitely people on this call who have. And a lot of times these products might be, I don't want to say better, but might be more focused on US only, or they might be focused in an area such as pharma searching. So there can be kind of specific foci within these products, and it could be that their contracts might be more flexible in terms of, you know, being able to offer individual seats rather than firm-wide or practice-wide, or being able to offer light seats. I know some of these products do that, so meaning you just want the secretary to be able to download documents, but she doesn't need the search functionality. So there could be some flexibility in the contract as well in some of these products. On the patent drafting side, we use a tool called Patent Optimizer. That's the one I'm most familiar with. It's interesting because that's really used mostly by the associates and the paralegals. The library staff doesn't use this. We're just not brought into looking at drafting a patent, and thank God is all I can say. But it's good to know what it does and what it is when attorneys ask you, and know how to at least troubleshoot the basics or get them in touch with the right people. And then the tracking and alerting, again, this is definitely a more, definitely not a comprehensive list. We use Total Patent Advisor. So I'm familiar with those products, and these other ones are some I found, but again, there's many, many more out there. So differentiators could be, is it included in a contract? Does it change depending on the frequency? How can it be delivered? What the coverage is? So a number of things can create differing factors in these databases. So they really have to be explored quite extensively. And then I'm going to just jump in a little bit on analytics. I've put at the bottom of the slide links to a presentation I did last October, which is probably already out of date, on litigation analytics. So the first is a PDF of the presentation, and the second is actually an Excel spreadsheet I worked up kind of comparing the different platforms. So this area is changing really quickly, so it's something you need to be aware of, that what you looked at last month may not be the same this month. So I hope to update that soon, but as of October 2016, that should be fairly accurate. So kind of looking at these different things, patent litigation, these are products I've mentioned earlier, but these are the three biggies that I would look to for patent litigation analytics. Now, when I'm saying analytics, I'm saying going beyond just a straight, this company has had this many cases, or these are all the cases this company has had. So those are the kinds of analytics, and I don't like using that word, more statistics maybe, and products like a monitor suite. So these are going beyond that to look at how a case is successful or not, results of the case in terms of how a patent was found invalid or not, for example, what remedies were, the length of the case before a judge or a court. So they're really diving into the outcomes of the case or the potential outcomes and looking at the judges and the courts. So they're really taking it a step further than kind of the products we've had for so many years. Jumping down to trademark litigation analytics, same thing. These are the two that I would go to for this. We have Lex Machina and Bloomberg Law litigation analytics. I'm constantly asking the vendors when we're going to get TTAB because, you know, patents have PTAB. Why don't we have TTAB? I've generally been told nobody knows if that's ever going to happen, so my apologies to all the trademark people, and I'm always having to apologize to trademark attorneys here that people don't seem to care enough about their analytics. But those are the two for federal court litigation analytics. And on the patent prosecution side, we have Patent Advisor. We don't have Pathways, but that's kind of a product, kind of tangential, but it would most likely be used more by an attorney or a docket, probably the attorney though. And Anography is another one that I'm really familiar with as a big player. But again, this is, again, not a comprehensive list on prosecution analytics. This is an area that is very nebulously defined, prosecution analytics specifically. So you could look at it as the same as a technology or a patent landscape, and that would sort of be true. It's kind of a hard thing to parse. What we use Patent Advisor for is a little similar to the analytics you might use in litigation, which is looking at success rates. Looking at kind of what caused pauses along the way, how long it took to get from step to step. So that's the big value we've gotten out of that, and we've been using this a lot in the RFP process as well. All right, taking too long here. So I'm going to go into some samples from different read tech platforms at this time and the way we see them. This is going to be really quick, and I'm sorry, I've kind of been a little long-winded, so we'll just keep moving along. So this is a snapshot from the Total Patent 1, and these little dotted lines are because actually this is one big wide screen that if I try to fit in one slide, it would be really teeny. So these are actually side by side if you were looking at the screen itself. But this is kind of a nice visual analytics snapshot If you have created a search and you're trying to see just really quickly the breakdown of the country, the breakdown of the variations of the assignee name, that sort of thing. And I also want to point out the post-search filters. Often we've had to go back to edit the original search or add filters more clearly. They've built this in right into the platform on your main results view page, which is nice. There's a toggle between the list view and the full patent view now, which is really great. So you're not having to open it, switch over to that individual view and then switch back to your results. These, again, with the dotted lines, these are side by side on the screen, though you can expand one, either left side or the right side, to see it more fully. And something I could not visualize here, or at least I couldn't figure out how to do, is you can actually have infinite scroll is what it's called. So instead of having to view 100 patents at a time and then go to the next one, you actually can just scroll through, in this case, all 667, as long as I have my preferences set the right way. I like that. I hate changing pages. I don't know, it's a personal thing. I'm going to jump over to Patent Advisor now. I've been really loving this product. We've been using it a lot lately. And there's a lot of things you can do in here. I'm just focusing on a couple things. To start, patent examiner statistics, I just picked a guy. So once you've picked the guy and they have an authority file that you can search in here, you've got a number of things you can sort by, a number of things you can filter by to kind of narrow down the data you're looking for under that examiner. I just pulled a couple of snapshots. This is definitely not comprehensive for all the things available on an examiner, but this was just looking at the last couple years in terms of the applications they worked on where they patented, abandoned, pending, with also the number breakdown on the left-hand side, which is nice. This is talking about why patents they worked on were rejected and kind of at what point in the process. And below, were the reasons for rejection even more broken out. And this is more looking at kind of a percentage perspective in terms of, again, things that happened on those patents, whether they requested the continued examination, the average time. So maybe you need to tell your client, well, we got to sign this guy, and yeah, he takes forever and a day. I'm not speaking about Thompson there, but just generally you can look at that information. Appeal statistics, so did they go to appeal? What happened? And you're actually viewing the actual patents. You can link into those directly. Again, that link into data is so important to patent attorneys. And then this is one of the art units that Thompson worked in. You could either connect through that from his profile or from the main page, you could jump into an art unit. I'm looking at, the last 2 years here for significant activity in the last 2 years, but I could have pre-filtered by a lot of other things. So you're kind of looking at what are the odds are for the art unit you filed within for, again, the same things we saw with the patent examiner, success rates, length of time, appeal rates, kind of the similar things are available. This is just at an art unit level. And here you're actually connecting into the examiners themselves, and here's our Mr. Thompson down here. And an alignment report we found especially useful in RFPs that we've been doing. So we're finding it more and more common that potential clients are asking for very specific sets of data in terms of stacking us, our firm's success rates or times to completion or experience in an art group against maybe within an art unit, so kind of stacking yourselves against the firm. Maybe they just want your statistics. So there's a number of ways they've been asking for it. And this is the only way we know how to do this in a very quick manner. And often, of course, with RFPs, it is a very quick, very short time frame we have to work within, at least by the time anybody asks us for it. I just ran an alignment report comparing the PTO, Samsung, and Apple. Use PTO is thrown in by default, but I think it's nice. And it's kind of looking at the two companies side by side in terms of, their allowance rate. And this is a really long spreadsheet, so I'd expand it out a bit, the number of granted, number of abandoned. So that's the alignment report, but there's so much more in there that I can't really show here, but it's a fun tool to play with for RFPs and just general knowledge. It can be useful for when attorneys are writing articles on the state of the industry, a lot of good data in here. I'm actually going to flip this really quick to Amantha to talk about Patent Optimizer. Again, this isn't a product that I do much with, but is heavily used by our firm, by our paralegals and attorneys. And Amantha, just tell me when you want me to advance to the next slide.
Sure. Thanks so much, Diana. So we threw this in there and just wanted to make you aware of this because, as Diana said, it's not a tool that you're necessarily going to use every day. That's more of, you know, at least the drafting features surrounding it. That's more of something the attorneys or paralegals and legal assistants use. But there is a feature within it that has some pretty complex analytics that, you know, to Diana's point earlier about Patent Advisor, the alignment report is a great business development tool for your firm. And, you know, in my experience, you know, working with firms, especially in sort of the mid-sized firms where they maybe don't have completely separate business development department, a lot of that sometimes gets, you know, kind of shoved upon the library, maybe in conjunction a little bit with marketing. So Patent Advisor and the Alignment Report, great tool for that. But then also there's this Patent Optimizer Analytics, which can be used in conjunction, and it just kind of goes down to the next level. And it allows you to take a very large amount of data, an undigestible amount of data, and put it into the analytics. It parses out everything right down to claim elements, to parts, of course, all of the bibliographic data as well. So this can be a great tool for competitive intelligence type of inquiries, if that's something that you're doing and falls within the scope of your job. But it's also something great for business development, if that's, you know, sort of being asked of you, in that you can really get to know a potential client or a current client's portfolio to help with that RFP. So if you want to just advance, Diana, I just took a couple of screenshots of some of the visualizations that are also available with this. So all of this can be filtered down to, you know, you can take 10,000 documents and with just a few clicks filter it down to a much smaller data set that's more relevant to you, and then sort of be able to look at that in a visual way. So for my prior example of using this with competitive intelligence, maybe you want to take a keyword search, export it into Patent Optimizer and see who are the major players, you know, in this field. And then if you want to advance one more time, and then also, again, sort of the idea of getting down beyond just sort of the bibliographic information, but actually parsing out all the parts of this document, you have ways of visualizing with just a glance, you know, what are these patents about and sort of how are these players intermingled within a particular space.
All right. Thanks, Amantha. So that's kind of the wrap on looking at those specific examples and the products. I just want to talk a little more, bring it back to what librarians need to know to find more areas you can work on within your practice groups. So let me zip through this, and hopefully we'll still have a couple minutes for questions. So the information I always want to have on hand when I'm trying to kind of pitch to work on more things for an attorney, and often this is very kind of just comes up, I don't know, organically in a conversation. Know your billing rates, and it's also good to know, are you lower or the same as a paralegal? How much lower are you than the associates? Understanding that comparison to say, you know, I can do this cheaper, faster, better for your client. That information should be easy for you to obtain at your firm. It would be a little odd if they were hiding it, but, you know, who knows. Project cost estimates. One of my librarians, I've been always really impressed at how he does this in terms of looking at the cost of the databases, estimating the time. He gives this quite detailed breakdown that really lays it all out, especially when he's being given large projects. So that's a good thing to be able to have at the ready, and you kind of save a template or a sample of one of those, and you can adapt it with new projects. Asking them their deliverable options, so understanding is this I'd like to say a quick and dirty email, so just throwing in the quick findies, you know, where a company is, what they're doing, and that sort of thing, or do they want something that's more a client-ready report, something fancier, something, you know, to really wow the client with. So knowing what is doable and examples, like I said, project examples from other attorneys that they really liked, certain reports you've done for them in the past, and be able to share that with that attorney's permission. This is one of my latest things I love to harp on. So often we're all asked to find billing rates. It's usually somehow contributing to an RFP, if not for a damages case, but we'll say it's for an RFP. And that's the point I usually ask, well, what about us? So we know they're lining up paralegals, associates, and partners within that RFP. And I've successfully managed this at least a couple times, or the other times nobody's told me if it was successful, which is another thing to note that you should follow up. But ask to be in the RFP. And the key thing to this, I'll say, is a title change might be necessary. It's really hard to sell the word librarian to corporate clients. They don't maybe understand what that role is within a firm. We've changed our reference librarians' titles to research analysts because corporations love the word analyst. And that hurts me to say because I love being a librarian, but it might be necessary to enhance the value or the level of participation of your department at the firm. And this is just a quick how to hire a law librarian in case there's anybody on the line there that isn't a law librarian and is looking to hire one, because look at all the awesome things we can do. These are just a few quick places to go for posting jobs or looking at current job descriptions and that sort of thing. And that wraps it with about 2.5 minutes to spare in our time today.
Thank you so much, Diana. I don't see any new questions. Some notes that several have enjoyed the presentation. And there was one question whether there would be recording or links to the PDF here made available, and they will be sent out to you by email in the next day or so. So you can be on the lookout for that. So thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Diana and Amantha, for your input, and hope that you'll now have these tools to help you be successful as a law librarian. So have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.